Hi everyone, today's webinar is on fabric pricing. My name is Carol and I'm here with Chrissy. So let's get started on fabric pricing in FrameReady. First thing I want to show you is a little bit of information about fabric. If you've worked with it before, you know that it has a lengthwise grain as well as a crosswise grain, and of course a bias grain, which we're not going to work with. But if you're working with FrameReady and you've worked with fabrics, you know then that it is a vertical piece. It will require more fabric. If it's a horizontal piece, it will require less fabric. So that's just one of those important little things to know about the fabric and how FrameReady calculates the fabric pricing and the usage of the fabric. So let's go straight into FrameReady. And in FrameReady, once again, we're at the main menu. And I want to, first of all, take a look at where you can get the fabric pricing. So if we go to the Update Vendor Pricing in the bottom right-hand corner of FrameReady, you'll see that there are a number of items selected on the list already. These are the vendors you currently have in your software program. If you want to add another vendor, you would go to the tab for your country. And if you click on the USA tab, and I'm going to click on F for Franks or framing fabrics, whichever ones we happen to have on the list here, you'll notice that the word fabric appears in the group. They belong to a different group in FrameReady than molding and Matboard. So it's really important that you choose the one that has the fabric, and that will download the fabric and install it into your price codes file in FrameReady. This is for the fabric wrapped mats. However, if you also use the liners that have the fabric on them, or even the raw liners, then you would want to download this item. If you have the fabric already adhered to the mat board, then you want to choose the one that is the group mat board. Today, we're going to be talking about the one that is the fabric. So that's where you can update those prices in FrameReady and install them into your program. The other thing that you may want to take a look at while you're in there is what the extension is for that fabric. So looking at the fabric, you'll see that the one that I'm working with today has an extension of .ff to identify them. So you can print out that list if you want, or you just take note of it, and we'll go and do some pricing. So first place we want to take a look at it is in the price codes file. When you click on the red corner sample with the blue $sign, this takes you directly to the price codes file. And in here, you'll see that there are headings at the top for each of those groups. And if I was to click on the group for fabric, it's going to automatically take me to the screen where I can see a list of all of the fabrics, 517 that I have entered in here right now. I've selected 3 that we're going to work with, and I've marked them using the marked box on the left-hand side. So when I click on Find Marked Records, it's automatically going to find the 3 that I want to work with. So I want to take a look at one of these to start with. To look at this particular fabric, it's important to know that we've got the item number up here, and in some cases it may actually be a number. In other cases, in this one example, it's actually the 2 words that describe the fabric, 4 letters of each, that are combined to make the item number. So it's important for you to know how to identify the fabric when you're entering it into the work order, and this is where you're going to see that. This is the description that's provided to us, and we have the wholesale cost. Now the wholesale cost is dictated by the dimensions, and this is the 36 inches for 1 yard, and then the 54 inches is the width of the fabric. Now the width varies depending on the type of fabric that you're working with, so you may see other widths that are in here along with the 36 inches. All right, each fabric has a different width. So that is already predetermined as well. That's part of your import that you receive with the dimensions. Fabric is always priced by the linear yard. At least that's what I would recommend. Over on the right-hand side, if you click on the dark blue tab for fabric pricing, you'll see that there are still a series of circles that you can identify. Linear yard is the one that we're pricing. If we were to choose one of the other options, then it's going to change the retail price that you're going to be charging. So my suggestion is that since this is a fabric, it is purchased by the yard, you're going to sell it by the yard as well. The default in FrameReady is already here, but of course we recommend that whatever the default is, you You change it, you modify it, you adapt it to your market so that you are getting the profit that you need for your area. So let's go ahead and take a look at the different ways that we can price fabric on the work order. When we go to the work order, there are two options for doing this. One is that we can price it separately, the mat separately, and the other option is that we can combine it. So we're going to go through both of those. This first one is how we're going to price it separately. So let me go ahead and enter in the mat, and I'm going to put the fabric in first. Now, it doesn't necessarily matter which order you put them in. If you decided that you wanted to put the fabric in first and then the substrate, you can do that. Or if you want to put the substrate in first and then the fabric, you can do that as well. So what I've done is I have my dimensions over here. This is a vertical piece with 2 inches of Matboard on it, and the Matboard is going to be wrapped with this fabric. So I've identified the fabric and how much is going to be used, but now underneath that I want to enter in the substrate that I'm using for this, and it could be a mat, it could be a mounting board, it could be any other items. You could just say scrap mat, and you can actually create a mat board called scrap mat and have that enter in. Be sure to price it out ahead of time though. Over on the right-hand side, what I want to do is identify, instead of a reveal, I don't have a reveal on this. The fabric is going to cover over top of the Matboard entirely. So that's why I click in the box and I select the word fabric. And that's why I say you can either put these in this order or you could put the Matboard on top and then the fabric here. It doesn't make any difference to the pricing. And it all depends on how you want it to appear on the work order. So now that I've entered in the fabric and the Matboard, I've priced the two of them together, and that combined price is the price up here in the top right corner for those two items. Other things that you would want to have priced out when you're doing a fabric wrapped mat is possibly under the mount stretch. What is the adhesive that you're using for this? How is it going to be on there? And I've got them grouped together so that if I press the letter F, it automatically goes to the section for fabric, because I've put the word fabric in front of each one of these. What you could also do is just put the letter F in front with a hyphen, and then you can select which way you want to have the fabric adhered to the Matboard or the substrate. Once you've added that in, the other fields that you could take a look at as well on here are fields such as fitting. If we go down to the fitting field, we may want to add in a fabric fitting charge for the wrapping of the fabric. So this would include some of the labor involved in that. If you decide that while you're pricing this out, you want to give the customer a discount, you can do that up in the top right-hand corner of the screen, enter in the dimensions or the percentage for the discount, and you'll see that the whole thing has been discounted now. And the labor is listed separately because we are only discounting the materials. I have it on my screen here just for this order where I've entered it in under fitting. If I click on that, there's a little X in the box here that says the labor is separate, it is not being discounted. If you decide that it is okay to discount the labor, then you would uncheck that box, and those two amounts are going to be combined in the top right-hand corner, and the labor is discounted as well. You can do this individually on each order if you choose, just by clicking on the underlined word fitting. But if you want to set this up ahead of time to ensure that your labor is not discounted, you would go back to the main menu under the Options tab, go down to More Options, and over here under the Invoicing Posting, you're going to select that labor would not be discounted. And once you choose it here, once you've selected it here, it will appear on every single work order that you create. So I'm just going to take that off and we'll go right back to where we were on the work order screen. So this is how we would enter in the Matboard and the substrate separately. And this allows you the option. The benefit of doing this is that you get the option to choose whatever substrate you want. However, in some cases, you may not want to do that. What you may want to do is price them together. So I'm going to go back to the price codes file and look at that option. That if I wanted to price those two together so that I don't have to select the substrate each time, I'm going to go to another record here, which is using a combined formula and code pricing. And what I've done is I have combined the pricing of the fabric with a markup and a set price added in there, along with a code table that I've created. And then I've marked the box over on the right-hand side for the combined formula pricing so that it's combined all of those together. If I take this off and clear out that code, you can see that this is the pricing for the fabric alone. The code that I created over here on the left-hand side was simply one that it was priced per united inch. So if you know that you use the same substrate all the time, or you want to price out the same amount all the time, you can create a code table using the button in the top left corner, decide how much it is that you want to have this added in here. Maybe it's $3.50 per united inch or whatever it is. Okay, once you've created that, give your code table a name. Okay, and I'm just putting it in there as what it is. Now that I've created the code table, no items are using this code table, I can go back to the price code screen. On the right-hand side, I'm going to click on fabric pricing. And now over on here, I'm going to select the code that I want. And when I select the code that I entered in here, there it is. You'll see that this is pricing strictly by the code, not for the fabric. You need to click on the button in the center here for the combined formula in order to combine the fabric and the substrate together. Now that that has been done, I can go back to the work order screen, and if I want to enter those two items into the work order together, all I have to do is enter that one fabric in, and it's combined the pricing together so that I've added in the substrate, or I've incorporated the pricing for the substrate without identifying it on the work order. And if you wanted to know the difference how these two work orders are going to look, this is the work order for the single substrate, so that I don't have the substrate, I do have the substrate identified on here. So you can see the fabric is listed on the left-hand side, and down underneath it is the substrate that I'm using. Again, how I'm having this adhesive added on, and the fabric fitting charge is on here. If I look at the work order for the combined, the two of them together, this simply has the fabric listed on here. It does not identify the substrate, but still I do have the adhesive that I'm using and also the fitting charge included as well. So that's basically the difference. The question is whether or not you decide that you want to have the substrate identified and it's going to change each time, or you're going to always use the same substrate regardless. So that's just the easy way of looking at that. The other thing that we want to cover in here is to add fabric onto a liner. And if I go to the next work order that I have created on here, this is where we're going to add the fabric onto the liner. Now, if I'm going to be putting a liner in here, I'm going to stack my frames up. So I'm going to click on the stack frame icon, and over on the right-hand side, I want to enter in my liner. And if I don't know the number of the liner, this is a really great tip. What I can do is I can just go to the group, say that I want a liner, and basically I want to make sure that it's a current one, that it hasn't been discontinued. And then when I click on search, it shows me all of the liners that are in here. If this is a raw liner, then I may want to add that into the description as well, that I'm going to be using a raw liner here. I want one that's currently available. And now here's my list of raw liners that I can use on here. So I'm going to select one of these liners, and the liner has been entered in. This is the raw liner. And to the left of that, I'm going to enter in the frame. And I've selected a specific frame to put in here. There, from Roma is the one that I want. And there's the Roma frame. So now the Roma frame is in here, and I have a raw liner. I need to add the fabric on now. So I'm going to click on the Done button. And the fabric in this case is not going to be entered into the Matboard because that's pricing it by the area to go onto a mat. This is going to be priced for a frame. And you'll see down here on the left-hand side, it says Glazing / fabric. This is the instance where I will enter the fabric into the Glazing / fabric field. When you click on the list, you're automatically going to get the drop-down list for all of the glass. Don't select any of those items. Click back into the empty field and type in the number that you want for the item. And I don't believe you need to enter in the extension on that. It's going to automatically find it because it's searching through the fabric and it's looking for that item, and now it has placed it in there. So it's placed it into the frame 1 field. So this is really important. I don't want my fabric to be priced for the inside lip of frame 1. And I'm going to click on the stacked frames because there's a great graphic up here. So right now it's pricing it to the inside lip of frame 1. I want it to be priced over top of frame 1 into the inside lip of frame 2. So when I go back to the work order screen down here where it says fit to frame, I'm going to click on this and say that I want it to go into lip 2. So there it's into lip 2 now, and it's being priced for that section. So if I go back to the frame and I decide that I want to add in perhaps another one, and I'm just going to say if I've combined the substrate, and I just want to double check on that. So yeah, that's the one that has the combined substrate. So I'm going to choose a different one so that I get a price without the substrate added on. So I think that's probably one of the important things in here is that, and I think gray is an option. There we go. I think that's an important distinction, that if you are going to combine the substrate with the fabric, when you go to this section and you're going to be adding the fabric onto the liner, you don't want the price of the substrate added on there. So I've added this, just the fabric pricing now, and I want it to be fitted into frame 2 instead of into frame 1. So you can see the difference in the pricing on there. Now, if I was to add perhaps another frame or something into the frame 1 field, I would use the insert button, and perhaps I have another frame that I want to add in there. So now I've pushed the fabric into the lip of frame 3. So it's going to go into the 3rd frame lip. So I'm going to click on the done button over here. I'm going to change the fit to frame, and it's going into the lip of frame 3. So that shows you how you need to identify which lip it's going to go into. If I was to print out this work order, this is how it would look on the printed work order, that I have my inside frame, my liner that's going in there, it's a raw liner, my outside frame in the frame 3 field, and then over here for glazing fabric, it shows me the fabric that's being used. There's an important note up here, fit glazing or slash, in this case, fabric into the frame 3, and that's where that's going. If there is a situation where, and I'll close that, you need to actually have glazing on here as well, that's fine. There is another field here so that you could, if you had glazing that was going on there as well, add that in, and you can identify which lip that goes into as well. So you do have that option to put glazing on top as well as the fabric. So that's the information that I have for you today on the for pricing out fabric and frames. And I'm just going to take a look here because I believe that if I did, and I thought somebody would probably ask about that, that if I did have the combined fabric pricing with the substrate added in here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and put that in so that I can see how it's going to price out. So it's going to price out with the substrate. Because I've used a code-based pricing for the substrate, you would in this case be able to take that code out so that it does just price for the substrate. But you probably don't want to do that every time that you're going to be pricing out the fabric wrapped onto a liner. So you have those 3 choices. One for pricing your fabric is that you can price the fabric out based on the fabric alone, add the substrate in. The second option is that you're going to have it added in with a combined pricing formula. Okay, and the third option is that you're going to put the pricing onto the liner. So you don't want to have the substrate added onto it. The same pricing for fabrics is the same as Matboard in some cases, where you have a markup, You have a set price. You do have the option to have a minimum price as well. If you did want to price out a minimum of 1 yard, you could do that as well. And then we've already seen how we can have a code table in here to combine together. So those are the pricing options. It's up to you which option you want to use. Once you've got your option set and you like it, add it to the pricing options and defaults by clicking. You press on the Shift key on your keyboard and click once on the pricing options and defaults button, and that will add your default specifically for fabric in here. Take out the dimensions. Okay, you can leave in the supplier name if this is just for this one supplier, but if it's for all of the fabric companies that you're working with, you can remove that as well. Once you've got that set up, enter in the date to say what is the date that you did this, and you set the pricing up and created it and then applied it. If you have any logic that you want to identify, go ahead and do that. Then click on the Apply to Group button and then apply it to all of the fabric that's in your database once you have your pricing established. So that basically is everything that you need to know about the pricing that's set up in FrameReady and how to price out your fabrics onto Matboard or LineMat. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope to see you again at the next webinar. Thank you.
Bye everyone. Thank you.